So I'll bring us to order on this Wednesday, April 26th, San Antonio Public Library Auditorium, Trustees meeting. You go ahead and take us through roll call to trustee.
Today is April 26, 2023. The time is 4:49 p.m. And those in attendance are Jim Brady, Joanne Harris, Josie Martinez, Andrea Sanchez Muniz.
Sorry, are we sure that you can bring this?
We're working to connect her.
Norma Montalvo, Fernando Cardenas, Jaspreet Kumar,
She is in round.
Marcy Enos, Beth Graham.
Here.
Judy Cruz. And Paul Stahl.
Present. So we got a quorum, Nicholas?
I believe we have a quorum.
Thank you. I don't see if anybody signed up to speak here presently, but I know someone submitted something, right, for public comment, right? And Nicholas, do you want to read?
Yes, sir. We have one public comment from Delia Trimble, 3715 New Rock Drive. The comment is regarding agenda item 17. Regarding item 17, Phase 2, Las Palmas Branch Renovation Project. Regarding item 17, Phase 2, Las Palmas Branch Renovation Project, consideration of two options for the Las Palmas Plaza. Metal panels along the bottom of the Las Palmas Plaza would be both practical and decorative if they were done in a design that approximated papel picado. There are certainly examples of papel picado designs everywhere now during Fiesta. I realize metal artwork, like we have at some of the other branch libraries, would probably be more costly, but even some type of metal lattice design for the panels would be attractive. Assume the panels are being placed over the glass enclosure structure. But if the trustees are only considering two options at this meeting, my preference would be for option 1, without the metal panels. Option 2, with panels, would be good if the metal panels could be decorated with some artwork, even if it's after the renovation is completed. Otherwise, they look rather plain. I think artistic touches would better reflect the culture of the Westside community where the Las Palmas Library is located. Appreciate that item 17 is being voted on because it means the Las Palmas renovation project can get started.
Great. Very much. We will. Skip right over the couple items. So I will back up a couple items. The approval of the minutes is our first item, and we have a form to consider that. So a copy of the minutes was already provided, an email and printed copy in front of you. So I'll entertain motions on the minutes.
March 22nd.
Motion, do we have a second?
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Are there any questions or discussion on the minutes? Okay, Nicholas, can we take it to a roll call, please?
Jean Brady, Joanne Harris, Josie Martinez, Andrea Sanchez Muniz,
Yes.
Norma Montalvo,
Yes.
Fernando Cardenas,
Yes.
Cruz. Paulstall.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you very much. We already covered the citizens to be heard, public comment. On to item number 2, under briefing and possible action. I have 2 Broken Library Board Chair. I attended the grand reopening of the Central Library on April 1st. Wonderful day that was. And I won't make any comments on that other than say the staff did a fantastic job. Congratulations to everybody for getting it open, getting us to that point. It was obviously a huge day of celebration, huge turnout. Marketing, everybody did a great job to get everybody else. So it was wonderful. I know some of y'all might have some comments on that. Move to comments from the trustees. Renee, I'll start with you. If there's anything you wanted to share?
I also attended the Central Library grand opening, and it was wonderful. Congratulations to the staff. We know there was a lot of hard work that went into it, and we did see a lot of the community members, and a lot of people were so happy with this grand opening, and what a major, major accomplishment the library has done. So thank you, Ramiro, and to all your staff.
I visited the District 10 Council office, the outreach office out on Loop 410, to drop off a Fiesta Medal and invitation to the Central Grand Reopening for Councilman Perry. He unfortunately was out of town on the SA to DC trip, so I personalized his invitation to ask him to come see Central after he got back to San Antonio and see all the good work that the staff had done. I also attended the Central Grand Reopening, and I just will echo what everybody else says. It was an amazing event. I did want to say that I thought it was an especially nice touch, and I don't know if it was our staff or if it was the staff at Arts and Cultural Affairs who included the 2 workmen who saved Jesse Trevino's mural from his house and kept it from being destroyed when the house was being remodeled. I just thought that was an extra nice touch to honor them. I attended a meeting where Mark White, who appears to be the leading candidate for the District 10 City Council office, was present, and introduced myself to him and talked to him about libraries, and he told me he doesn't know anything about libraries, so I told him to ask me anything he wanted to know, and I would tell him. And I attended the book festival and epilogue reception at the end of the day, and the book festival was great as usual. People keep asking me which sessions I attended. I come because I like to just walk around and look at the book stalls and all the exhibits and everything, but the foundation, the book festival commission did a super job as well.
Yeah, this is my first year. And the panels that they have are actually really, you don't have to have anything but the author, the topic, or anything. You draw with the discussion.
I did go to one. I did go to Walk with the short story, and it was excellent.
Norma, you want to go next? Is there anything you'd like to share?
Sure. A few weeks ago, we had a meeting in our finance team about the Los Public Library. I was able to see the layout, the options. I am absolutely floored by the community, the way they designed it, so it's really exciting.
Norma, disagree?
I know everyone has mentioned Central, so I'm going to just share a different side of Central Library. During the day that we had our grand reopening, which was amazing, my kids and my nieces discovered the teen area of Central Library, and this isn't a local library for us, So whenever we come, in the past when we've come, it's been like, let's go here, let's go here, let's go here. That day, they actually went into the teen area and were like making music and making bookmarks and doing all these things and did not want to leave. Like, I came back to get them 3 times. I was like, okay, 10 minutes, let's go. And it was just awesome because for those of you who have seen children grow up, normally teenagers, they get out of that childlike phase, wanting to like make music or make art and become more like, just behave the way I think society expects them to behave. So that was really amazing. When we left, I met a young man who had a child in the teen area, but who also grew up attending programming at the teen area. And he shared with me and my husband how the library saved his life. That was his words. And he talked very specifically about times where he had nowhere else to go, no other safe place to be, and he hung out at like the teen space. And ended up like doodling and exploring art, and there's lots of arts and crafts up there. So I just wanted to share that. That was like very touching for me, and also just a core memory, to see that kind of creativity and childlike freeness in my kids. So I just want to say thank you, Ramiro, to you and your staff that creates that safe environment. I also attended a meeting to discuss the upcoming renegotiation of the ILA, and I think we'll be talking a little bit more about that.
Marcy, would you like to share?
Well,
You're in the country.
well, I was here long enough.
Thank you. To go to the book festival, and it was fabulous. And I was there at 8 o'clock in the morning, and I'm glad I was because it was really good tacos. And it was a good way to get the day started. And I went to every single session. I mean, my sessions were overlapped with each other, so I went to everything, learned so much. I have so many books on my list now. And I especially enjoyed, I could go on to all the different sessions. They were wonderful. They really were so many great, authors. But I particularly enjoyed the reception afterwards because that gave me a chance to talk to the authors more and get their opinion on things, which was interesting to me, like digital books and things. I wanted to get their opinion, and some were not in favor of digital books, which is no surprise to me. But we did have a good debate about it, discussion about that. But the way it was organized, it was so easy to do. You could build your own schedule. I think the couple problems were that there were so many things you wanted to go to that it was difficult to make decisions. And sometimes you would just listen for a little bit. You'd have to get on to the next one. But it was inspiring, the whole thing. I think if I were going to make a suggestion, one is that on the calendar where it says you had one of the events on the East Terrace, and I think they ought to say third floor library, because I think a lot of people walking around could not figure out where the East Terrace was, and they wasted, and you don't have any time really between sessions. So I think just to add that simply on the map, third where it is, so people know where it was, because that was, even I had trouble. All of a sudden I went, oh, this is the East Terrace. But it was finding in that was for Char Miller, and as all of them were great. So thanks for all the hard work. It paid off, and the attendance was good. The weather was much better than I've seen in past years. So I'm looking forward to the next one. So thank you.
Josie, I don't even know if you snuck in.
Just a couple of brief comments, because I left my notes at school. Enjoyed basically the two big things that took place, Central Library reopening and the book festival. And at the book festival, I got to meet up with some old friends, Yvette Benavides, I hadn't seen her for a while, David Bowles, Carolyn Flores, and a couple of the other children's authors that it's such a delight to see them face to face.
Like everybody else, I came to the Central Library opening, and as a teacher, I spent a lot of time on the third floor checking out books for my students, because you're never too old to read picture books. And when I saw the change, I was just amazed. It was so beautiful and so interactive. And I went to school that Monday, and I was talking to my coworkers who have young children. I said, you really need to go check out Central Library. There's so much to do. And they're like, oh, there's just books. I was like, no, they have tables. It's more child friendly. So I said, you need to go take a field trip with your kids, your wife. Go have a good time. You don't even have to pay that much. It's parking, that's it, and validated. So I was really excited to go back and talk about the children's area. But then I actually had a conversation with my grandmother, and I did not know this, but they do field trips for seniors. And so my grandma went on a field trip with her senior group, and they met up at a community center, and they brought them to the Central Library. And they took them on a tour to see all the changes. And when she got home, she called my father right away and was like, oh my God, the Central Library is so beautiful. And did you know this? And did you know this? And she was already ready to go back on the next field trip to the library. So just to hear her excitement, somebody who doesn't normally go to Central Library, she stays in her local area, but just to hear the excitement in her voice, as my dad put it, about going to the library and seeing everything here, it was an experience. I also went to the book festival. I did not get here at 8 o'clock. I got here around 10, and I thought, it's not going to be that bad at 10. Traffic was crazy, and I think it would have been crazy no matter what time I came. But it was exciting to see that many people were so eager to get into the book festival. So I do appreciate the VIP parking, because I felt like a rock star. But it was great walking around and just seeing everybody so excited. My best friend and I were already picking out our next book for book club and calling like, okay, this is going to be my book I suggest, this is going to be your book I suggest. So it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, we had quite a run. Extremely successful event. I know we made everybody proud, made the city proud, and hard to overstate how wonderful and how awesome it is when we have such successful programming that you can tell it's a full side, right? It shows how touch we are. Thank you, everyone. Moving on to item number 4, Central Library Director report. Here, March.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll be brief. This week is National Library Week. It's an annual celebration of libraries. And during the week, various things or aspects of libraries are emphasized. For example, on Monday was Right to Read Day as part of National Day of Action. To support the right to read. On Tuesday was National Library Worker Day, and I want to thank our board chair for sending a note congratulating and recognizing all of our library employees for the work they do to support the service efforts of the San Antonio Public Library. I shared that message with the entire staff. It's greatly appreciated. Today, Wednesday, is National Library Outreach Day. Thursday, tomorrow, will be Take Action for Libraries Day, a day to rally advocates to urge members of Congress to protect the freedom to read. So again, we're celebrating National Library Week all week. I also wanted to let you know that San Antonio Public Library will have a presence at the Battle of Flowers Parade. We have a team of 20 library employees that will be part of will be marching with the parade, will be part of the parade. I wanted to share that with you. Last year, I think it was, yes, they were extremely popular. People shouting, yay, libraries, go libraries. So we expect that to continue to happen. So I want to acknowledge and recognize all those employees that are participating in that parade. I want to remind the library board that we will be having our second all-staff in-service day. That will be May 5th, 2023. We will close the library system for half a day to allow the leadership to meet with the respective teams and participate in staff development activities as well as any projects that they may want to undertake within their unit. I wanted to give you a brief update on the assessment of the partnership between the San Antonio Public Library and the Friends. Jessica and I have been meeting on a regular basis with a consultant as he's getting ready, he and his team are getting ready to draft the final report. We will present the draft report or we plan to present to the board next month, draft report of their assessment and their recommendations, so look forward to that. We are all looking forward to that. The library will be one of two departments featured at a City Council B session meeting on May 3rd. Both the Parks Department and the library will be featured as it pertains to summer programs that we offer to our youth. David McCary will be making the presentation. By the way, Mr. McCary is not here today. He is in Minnesota attending a business meeting. He sends his regrets. Some of you talked about the grand reopening of the Central Library. It was wonderful. So I want to reiterate all the accolades. Just a reminder, the Brook Hollow Branch Library closed on April 24th for the replacement of the HVAC system. As previously reported, we will be able to accommodate voting even though we closed the branch library for the system, for the HVAC system. And the closure, the length of the closure is expected to be around 12 weeks. Interim services will be offered at the Walker Ranch Senior Center located at 835 West Raspberry. That concludes my report. I'm happy to respond to any questions that you may have on the oral report as well as the written report that's included in your packet.
Thanks, Ramiro. Does anybody have any questions?
The first question is sparked by the update for the Cody Branch Library. And there's a mention here about a librarian who attended an elementary school and then showed students how to sign up for a library card. And not a question about Cody, but just sparked a question in my mind. We have a lot of libraries and librarians that do outreach with local schools that are in San Antonio-related school districts, such as Northside, ISD. But many of those schools are actually located outside of the city limit, where attendees live in other counties, but they're like still part of that school district. Is there any literature or guidance on how children sign up for library cards? Is it just associated with the school, or are they just giving them paperwork that they take home and then fill out online?
Dale will be able to respond to that question, so I'm going to defer to Dale.
So generally, when a librarian is visiting a school, and of course most of our schools, most of, not all of the students live in Bexar County, so in most of the schools. But where they would live in another county as well, the librarians are aware of that, and they would mention that to the students or to the group they're speaking with. They are usually just bringing applications and talking about the library. They're not actually applying for a library card at the school. With high schools, it's a little different, but we don't do as many direct visits to high schools either.
My second question is about the book festival. I was just curious if there is any plan to share some of the panelist discussions as like streaming content on the library's website.
I don't believe so. Jessica is our point of contact with the book festival. I don't recall having a conversation about kind of retroactively sharing any recorded author experiences, readings, or panel discussions and so on.
We can certainly ask the book festival. I believe they may have some on their website. If that is the case, we can easily link to
I think you raised a very good question. This will be, could be, if we can make it happen, an opportunity to share the experience with others that perhaps were not able to come downtown, or were not here, were not available. I like that idea. We'll explore it with a book festival.
And it might be a good teaser for next year too, if we have some snippets from this year that you could share. I think it helps build the hype. Thank you.
Good suggestion. Thank you.
I have a question, just out of curiosity mostly. What steps are we taking to accommodate voting at Brook Hollow? Are they using the meeting room?
The meeting room will be available, will be fully functional as it pertains to, it'll be cooled if it's hot, and warm if it's cold. Yeah.
Okay, just curious, thank
The
you.
staff did a very good job of planning for that activity.
I'm sure they did.
And as you know, Brook Hollow is one of our heaviest voting sites. Yeah.
And in terms of the other branches that are undergoing any type of work, there's
Las Palmas is the other one that's closed for renovation. We have also, again, the team did a great job of planning ahead and making sure the meeting room would be available for voting.
Just want to put that on the record there, so that's great. Very important to make those accommodations, so I appreciate the staff making sure that that service goes uninterrupted. We'll move on to number 5, budget report for March 2023. And that is your green sheets.
Good afternoon, board members, Mr. Chair. I'm going to provide a brief overview of the library's operating budget as of the end of March. So if you're online, viewing it online, it's page 81 in the PDF, and as Paul stated, it's on the green sheets in your packet in front of you. As of the end of March, half of the fiscal year had elapsed. So we were at 50% of the fiscal year elapsed. We were at 51% spent, including encumbrances, or 49% without them. Overall, we're in line and on track with our spending, as of the end of March. So as you review and look over the report, you'll notice that some items are overspent and some items are underspent. The City Council approves our budget at the department level, so this is allowable. And we are in constant communication with the Office of Management and Budget and Finance to explain any of the variances that they ask about. So that completes my overview, but if you have any questions, I can take those.
Do the trustees have any questions? So I have a question on temporary salaries.
Yes.
Large variances during the comments going on there.
Yeah, we currently have 10 temps that are working for us. We have one in the teen library. We have one in our capital projects area, one in our org health division, and then the rest of them are out on the public service areas, filling in for, shortages while we are filling positions. That is part of like a staffing tactic that we normally take when we start having vacancies where we see, that they're affecting public service.
Any questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Moving on to item number 6. Report from the executive committee. April 18th is set the agenda for the meeting. Item number 7, report from the budget committee.
Yes, so the Budget Committee met on April 11th. Am I in the right month? Yes, I am, April 11th. And it was right before the City Council goal-setting session. So we kind of talked about all the prep that had happened before the City Council goal-setting session. And then the City Council goal-setting session happened on April 13th. And so we did send out a brief summary of what happened at that City Council session. The typical, the usual issues came up. There was a lot of discussion of infrastructure, animal care services, housing, et cetera. The one item that came up specifically for library was an interest by actually 6 of the council members ended up mentioning this as an interest, which is expansion of the enhanced library card program. So potentially expanding it to all branch libraries as opposed to, right now we issue those through 7 locations. So that was, the budget committee meeting happened right before the city council goal setting, but that's what occurred at the city council goal setting.
Any questions? Moving on to item number 8, working with the facilities committee.
Good afternoon, everyone. Yes, the Facilities Committee did meet on April 12th. We had several action items, 2 of which will be coming to you later in the agenda. We have a few that I'll bring you up to date on right now of some current projects, and then there is also the full construction report in your packet if you have any other questions. So the first project will be the Texana Bond project, which the construction is underway. We started on April 1st. We closed to the public for Texana for a couple of months. Basically, they're going to reopen, they're going to reset up down in the Central Lido space. That area used to be Java Nook, for those that can remember way back when. They're going to have interim service in there starting for drop-in customers. So they've been diligently working this past month so far, packing materials. We've got a moving company moving things back and forth. So very, very careful, and we're having the staff move all the materials, and the moving company is moving the furniture. So we don't actually have moving company people grabbing the documents themselves. That's being handled very carefully by our staff. So the next one will be the Brook Hollow project. As Ramiro had mentioned, the branch closed this past Monday, but they are open for voting. Construction is scheduled to begin in earnest after the voting is done. They're going to have to bring some cranes in, so they're kind of holding off on removing a lot of the equipment until after the voting is done. But we're going to coordinate that activity, and that'll still be done in the 12-week period that Ramiro had mentioned. The other thing I want to talk to you about today, we had a question at the Facilities Committee about the municipal solar update. So I just wanted to run by a couple of those things. The municipal solar update is regarding the on-site solar project, which includes rooftop solar or parking lot canopy solar. And that, as you can see, there is a presentation going to the City Council sometime in mid-May or later. The final decisions are supposed to be made in May as far as who's going to be providing this service to the city. Start looking at the different locations and how we're going to implement them in the various projects, particularly at the Brook Hollow Library and the Carver Library, Central Library Parking Garage, and IGO and Las Palmas Libraries. The other part that we're dealing with is the electric vehicle charging stations. Now that one has hit a little bit of a delay because there's been some ADA improvements and costs that they have to incorporate into this program. So they've kind of put most of those on hold now until they get all that stuff solidified. We are working to include EV charging stations in the Brook Hollow parking lot project. We're coordinating with the Office of Sustainability on that to make sure that we can coordinate all that into the project as we move forward with that. And that concludes my updates. Any questions? Yes.
So in regards to Yellow Library Branch,
Mm-hmm.
it's a that this book was reevaluated. Do we know when that happened, equipment is going to come in?
The equipment is actually ordered, and I believe it's supposed to be sometime in the next 3 or 4 months. There's some long lead times on it. That equipment actually was ordered, I believe, back in February, I think. No, that's that was a phase 2 on that project, yeah. That was the reevaluation that we had to do because the budget came in so high on the first phase. So we did the first part, which was 2 of the HVAC units. The second phase, which we're going to be doing this summer and fall, is going to be the 2 main units, which take care of the main body of the library.
On the ADA issue with the EV charging stations, is that on the charging technology, or is that on the location or site?
I think it's primarily space, just because they're having to take up additional parking space, so they're just determining how they have to make these things accessible. So And you also have to, it also has to be accessible from the charging location to the building itself, so that also adds a lot of complexity to the situation at all our locations.
So it's a placement issue, not a technology.
I don't believe it's a technology issue at this point, no.
I know the self-serve, the EV market is becoming more aware of Section 508 and ADA compliance issues kind of as they mature, and some of them are getting caught off guard, so, okay.
Yeah. And I know the city's trying to be a leading edge on that to make sure we do everything as compliant as possible and drive everybody else to do the same thing, so.
Push compliance down the vendor.
Right, yeah.
Great. No other questions? We'll move on. Thank you, Mark. And thank you, Andrea. We'll move on to item number 9, report from the naming committee. Judy's not with us, but the naming committee also did not meet during this reporting period. Item number 10, a report from the Public Relations and Advocacy Committee. And welcome, Jean.
I think Jessica's going to do it. Oh.
Great. Thank you, Jean.
Good afternoon, trustees. The Public Relations Advocacy Committee met on April 20th. And as an update, as discussed during the last board meeting, the Library PR Advocacy Committee did initiate a note card campaign. You may recognize it from previous years. So it's this note card in the back that's blank. And so at the Friends board meeting on March 26th, Trustee Josie Martinez handed these out and asked the Friends to complete cards, and we hand delivered them to mayor and council right before goal setting. And this was a tactic to bring the library before the council right before goal setting. And then I also did drop off some cards to Amy as well for her board. And it'll continue. They're not dated, so they'll continue to be a useful tool should it be deployed in future tactics as the budget development process continues. So I did want to provide that update. The main goal for the PR Advocacy Committee this month in April was a briefing on American Library Association's Library Week. It's essentially every day of the week is celebrated in a different way. Yesterday was National Library Worker Day, and as Ramiro mentioned at the beginning of the meeting, there was an email that was sent to library staff that did express appreciation from our board chair and the board to staff. So that was a very nice tactic, and it was a suggestion of our PR committee chairwoman, Jean Brady. So thank you for her for that suggestion. I will note that the very last day for this week of celebration of libraries is an advocacy day, and our call to action this year is to use the library. We felt that that was a way to demonstrate the importance of libraries is by using the library. So whether it's checking out a book, attending a program, or even getting a library card. So that is our call to action this year. So a big thank you to our communications team who developed our very own graphics for the week activities we've been promoting on our social media and website, and it's been a success thus far. And that was the gist of our the committee's work. Will we be promoting on May 3rd, the city will be doing proclamation in honor of Older American Month? Will the library be doing anything, email blogs or anything on the website honoring Older American Month?
Yes, our Adult Services Coordinator, Morgan Yoshimura, has been working diligently with all of the library locations to look at different ways to offer programming. So there has been a robust program developed, and Dale is here, but we did meet with Morgan 3 days ago. So there is work that has been developed at the branches. From the communication side, we will be doing a targeted release to media outlets that focus on senior services, so that we felt a targeted approach was the best approach for this specific audience. And so we will be doing media releases in that regard, and then we'll look at other ways to promote throughout the month various activities that are taking place.
Are any other, Is anyone else doing, for advocacy, doing what we did with the postcards at the goal setting session?
Not that we're aware of. What we did is we collected them and we hand delivered them 2 days prior so that it wouldn't get there too early and it wouldn't get there too late. So it was one of those where we tried to do a timing issue. We haven't heard of anything yet. Usually this tactic is employed during the proposed budget timeframe. So it may be one of those timing issues as well.
I'm just curious. Anyone else is doing that? If we were copying or someone copying us? Sounds like the method that we're using, we may not even know if others might be doing that, so great. I think that's wonderful, and I think everything that you reported on is exciting stuff, good stuff. All right, thank you very much. We'll move on to item number 11, report from the Ad Hoc Board Policy Committee.
I think Dale's doing that.
Is that correct, Dale? Are you doing that? If Gene says you're doing it, I think you're doing it, Dale.
Not meet this month. However, there is an action item from the previous meeting.
And item number 12, report from the Ad Hoc ILA Committee. We met on April 18th, and we'll be giving a report in executive session. Item number 13, report from the San Antonio Public Library Foundation. Amy?
We were also out at the Book Fest with our literacy caravan, and thanks to Beth for coming by to see us. We gave away 3,250 children's books to kids at Book Festival and 1,000 bottles of water and 5,000 snacks. So it was a busy, busy day for us and a lot of fun as always. We are currently working with donors to secure funding to clean the Chihuly, as well as to clean and untangle the Amato glass piece. As most of you know, the Amato and the Botero are both owned by the foundation, so we're responsible for care of those pieces. We're also working on getting a new appraisal of the Botero. Several of our board members think we're not insuring it for enough, so that will be happening very soon as well. You all should have received the e-save the date for Katrina Ball. We sent that out last week, and we are finalizing plans. We will have a request to Ramiro's office soon about what parts of the Central Library we would like to ask to use for that event. And you may have noticed from our e-save the date that our sub-theme this year is the monarch butterfly. We always try to take a piece of that tradition, and so it's not just all sugar skulls all the time. Last year we had the alebrijes, and this year the monarch butterfly. So we're also discussing a change to our literary luncheon. We are not doing a luncheon this year. Our luncheon next year, we are looking at changing it because, as happens every time, and as happens here when we're talking about Book Festival, there's still a lot of confusion, especially at the donor level between the foundation and the Book Fest. We spun them off in 2019, but there is still a lot of confusion. So we were doing a literary luncheon very similar to the luncheon that they were doing. So we are changing because the proceeds for that are going to support our internal programs, Born to Read and the Literacy Caravan. We are going to pivot that to a children's author for the luncheon, as the speaker for the luncheon. And so we're talking about doing that in early June of 2024. That way you can, if you have a kiddo who can sit through a luncheon and we have an author that they like, that you could actually bring your child with you as well. Our nominating committee is beginning its work for 2024 in May, so that's coming right up. So if you have any recommendations for potential board members for the foundation, please email me and let me know, and I will get that before our nominating committee. And just lastly, our board is really looking forward to the bus tour again this year. We did it for the first time last year, and everybody just loved it. We visited 4 library branches in a couple of hours, box lunch on the bus, and all sorts of getting to know you activities for the board members. And so this year we're visiting San Pedro, Cody, Potranco, and Memorial, and that's on July 19th. So we're looking forward to that. Are there any questions?
I don't have a question, but I did want to say, and I'm sorry I neglected to mention seeing you at the book festival. I got a personalized tour of the improvements to the literacy caravan, and it's really exciting, and there's a lot more opportunities for the kids to engage with technology. And I think it's amazing that they gave away more than 3,000 books.
Amy, I did actually have a question, or actually a comment. As soon as you mentioned the cleaning of the Chihuly, I just had this strong imagery in my head about, I mean, that's kind of in my mind, in my opinion, that's kind of a significant task. I think it shows how we're taking care of, you know, the valuable, or the art that we have, you know, in our purview. Is there any thought or possibility of sort of PR tie-ins with that activity?
Well, I think that would be a library question. We just fund it, but it is the people from Chihuly have to come down from Seattle, so it's a pretty big deal.
The story is writing itself. The more you,
It's not just a big sliver.
yeah.
And it is a really great media opportunity. It's novel enough that they really jump on it. So.
Amy just wrote the headline. It's not just a big sliver. Thank you very much. Item 14, report from the Friends of the San Antonio Public Library.
John Costello, the president of the Friends of the San Antonio Public Library, sends his regrets. He's not able to attend today. He is coordinating all of the logistics for the King William Fair this weekend. So as you can imagine, he is quite busy right now. So he did send a report, and I'm happy to read that for you. The Friends of the San Antonio Public Library Board met on March 26 at the Westfall Branch Library for a brief but productive meeting prior to the board members and branch group presidents' participation in a focus group facilitated by Martín Gomez. The details of the Friends of the Library and the San Antonio Public Library Partnership Project are covered in an article by Mr. Gomez in the front page of the newsletter of the faux saplings. And if you do not have a copy of that, it should be either emailed or mailed to you. If you do not have that, please let me know, and I'm happy to get that to you. As reported last month, there is a vacancy in the online sales position, but our volunteer is doing an outstanding job. During the first 3 months of this year, 144 items have been sold online with an average profit of about $25 for each item. Business in the bookseller has picked up now that more of the Central Library is open for business. Members continue to be a challenge, with a number of members not renewing by the first of the year. To address this drop, there will be a membership drive in early summer. Unfortunately, several branches have reported vacancies in their leadership positions. We shall be working with these branches to identify new leaders. The next Friends of the San Antonio Public Library Board meeting will be on May 21st at the Encino Branch Library. And that concludes the report from John.
Moving on to item number 15, which is the staff report. This is the mid-year report on the library's performance metrics for the fiscal year 2023. This is an information item.
Good afternoon again. It's my pleasure to introduce Randall Velasic from our team. Randall is a member of the library senior management team, and he's our performance and innovation manager. And I hope I'm not going to embarrass him by saying this. I should say I'm introducing Professor Randall Velasic because he teaches at UTSA. He's teaching our next generation of public administrators. And he just finished up his last class today. So anyway, with that, I'll turn it over to Randall so he can give you our major performance report.
Great. Welcome, Randall.
So thank you, Kathy. It's perfect timing. It happened to be last day of class at UTSA with the same day as our board meeting.
So I'm happy to deliver our mid-year presentation report. Just wanted to start off with our key performance indicators. We have 3 that we closely follow. The first is our library circulation of materials. This is both physical and digital items that are checked out and renewed. The second key performance indicator is going to be our hours of technology use. This is where we're looking at computer hours and Wi-Fi hours. We add those together, and that's how we're following our technology that's being used at our library locations. And then our third key performance indicator is library visits. That's where we're counting the number of individuals that are visiting each of our locations. So believe it or not, we have 6 months of our fiscal year already complete. Last time I checked, I thought it was October. So we have 6 months of actual data that we are going to be looking at and analyzing. And we're really going to be focusing on this time frame, looking at these 6 months as a mid-year. So the first thing I want to talk about is what do we mean by when we're talking about monitoring performance against target goals that are set. Obviously, due to the pandemic, a couple of our performance of KPIs were adjusted. We do have adjusted plans, and we have monthly goals and milestones for each month. And we're constantly reporting to you in our monthly board report here what our monthly target and actuals are. And when we are developing each of those, it is each summer. It's part of budget development, and we have to look at both historical past performance and then also anticipated results for the future. So it is more of an art than science sometimes. We have to try our best to create these plans. The good thing is we do anticipate that we are going to reach all of our key performance indicators by the end of this fiscal year. So very high level, as a summary, for library visits, we are reporting 1% above for library visits. For hours of technology, we are reporting 2%, slightly below, and our circulation is being reported at 16% below. Now, just wanted to mention, at any time throughout the fiscal year, we do not really consider a major red flag when we're showing above or below, because it is just a snapshot in time, and we're going to continue to monitor each month of the year. So the next 3 slides, we're going to dive into each of these key performance indicators. So again, with library visits being slightly above at 1% here. As we all know, behavior has changed, how users are visiting the library. Just real quickly, we're about half compared to what our library performance visits was pre-pandemic. Although we are noticing visits are trending up if you do look at it year to year. So just looking at last fiscal year, we have about 300,000 more. So we are slowly making progress to making a recovery. For hours of technology, that is 2% below. We are noticing that there is an increased use of Wi-Fi inside the library and in parking lots still. We've also observed we have many users that are bringing their own device, meaning that they're using their phone, their tablet, or laptop to still connect to the internet just with their own device. And technology is approaching pre-pandemic levels. It's about 85% recovery of what it was in 2019, and we're continuing to see that grow. And then the last one, for circulation, which is at 16% below this target goal here. We do believe with the recent reopenings that we all went through, that should start increasing circulation, from Central, Memorial, and Forest Hills. At the same time, digital items remain popular, and use is continuing to grow each month. And then circulation has returned to what it was to pre-pandemic. There is just a little note there on your screen. There are also some policy changes that were made, one of them being auto-renewal, where items are renewed if there's no one else waiting for that item. And of course, going fine-free this fiscal year. Those are some just policy changes that we made that positively helped return library circulation. And for my last slide here, this is a chart that you are familiar seeing in the monthly board report. Just wanted to bring it to your attention. We did initiate an address cleanup project to precisely allocate basically the other we've always had very precise data of how to attribute residency for both county and city, but there is this other that we talked about in previous meetings where some of our service points didn't have a way that we collected address or had a verification process, such as using Sora or online cards. So this month, you may notice it is a 2% change due to that cleanup project. So over time, we're hoping to continue this, and you may see some of these categories start to no longer be there because we actually have an address we can verify and report correctly. And I'm happy to take.
I just was going to add one thing. So going back to the pie chart slide, so this is critically important because, of course, this is the data we're using currently to renegotiate the contract with the county, right? So I just want to be super crystal clear on this point. We have always had incredibly precise data, and nothing has changed for the city use and the county use. So we've always tracked it by the individual's address for each transaction, right? So that has always been very precise. The part that hasn't been as precise is the other, those other pie pieces. So not the orange, not the city use, not the blue or kind of periwinkle, not the county use, but all those other pie slices you see there, the 9%, the 1%. And the reason is the nature of the service, right? So Sora is the product that the schools can use. So students use it. So we didn't in the past have the student address because of the way they access the service. Another one is the Overdrive digital card. So you get that online, you get it using your cell phone number, and you can enter any address basically and it's going to take it, and so it's not necessarily verified precisely. So the team got very creative because to the extent we can, we do want to figure that out more precisely and then allocate it to either city use or county use depending on the address. So they've gotten really creative, and I can't tell you all the details, but Randall could if you want, to use GIS to start pinpointing addresses for those other services. So over time, you'll see that the other pie pieces are going to start probably getting smaller, and then that more precise information will let us put those users into either the city pie slice or the county. So thank you for letting me just elaborate on that. I just repeated a bunch of stuff he just said, but I felt compelled just giving the ILA discussion.
And I'm happy to address any questions you may have from this presentation.
What's a SAPL unit card?
SAPL unit cards are cards that are established for each location to use for their own outreach or programming, so they're in-house use.
I might have missed something at the very beginning. So your percentages are percentages against the goal. That's not against last year's, where we were last year. And how were the goals? What I might have missed was how the goals were determined.
Yes, so if you don't mind going to the summary slide, the fourth slide. So every summer, so about May and June, we start looking at a combination of historical data, right? And then we anticipate if there's any enhancements, improvements, if there's any closures by location. We take all that into account to start adjusting. So for example, for library visits, the goal was set to be 50% of what it was pre-pandemic, because that's what we're experiencing. For library circulation, it was 100% of what it was in 2019. And then, of course, through adjustments through closures. And in fact, we increased it to 125% of digital because of just how much significant growth we're seeing with digital circulation occurring. So it's much calculation and then dividing that into monthly goals, and that's how we are monitoring.
And you're monitoring it. I mean, we're getting an update here midway through, and how often is it being monitored or communicated?
Traditionally, the presentations are mid-year and again at end-year end.
But is it monitored by others besides just us?
It's internal, and at the same time, the city does provide a 24/7 quarterly report where these same exact key performance indicators we're sharing every quarter. So the next one will be due probably in June or the next quarter.
Sure.
Yeah, and just to share also on what the city does. So each department is on its performance. We report monthly to you in your monthly performance report. It is against targets. It's against those targets we set for the fiscal year. And then as Randall just mentioned, that data also gets reported to the city through the budget office. And it goes on to the city's website as part of the city's 24/7 performance report. So all of those key performance indicators that we just went over, and actually a little bit more data in terms of comparison to peers, also is reported to the city, to the city manager, to the city council, and then also to the public via the city's website through the 24/7 report.
Gotcha. Okay, I'm tying it together now. Maybe my brain was a little behind, so perfect. Okay, are there any other comments? Here we go.
The circulation goal, following up on Paul's question, just some additional clarification. Is it just a flat 50% at the 50% time mark, or are you accounting for seasonality that we see in branches?
Are you asking for the circulation or for visits?
The circulation goal.
Okay, for circulation, for example, the goal that was set, the target goal, is actually higher than what it was in 2019 for this month of March, just because of we're anticipating more usage. Visits was the one where it was flatlined 50%. So there's a difference with the methodology for each of those.
Okay.
And then your other specific question about circulation, is it just, half of the year we think it's going to happen in the first 6 months and the rest in the last 6 months? No, we do take seasonality into account. So it's not just 1/12, for each month. It really takes into account primarily summer reading is a big driver. And then we do tend to have a dip around winter holidays.
Okay.
So we do try to do that.
So even with that, just to make sure I see the numbers, understand the numbers, even with those adjustments on the, that's changing the 1/12th number, basically, right? You've made those adjustments. We're still behind by 16%?
That's right. And so one reason that we don't, as staff, feel like it's a huge red flag is because in any given month, at any typical snapshot, there's a lot of variability as to whether we're hitting our target precisely. And so those other factors that Randall had mentioned for circulation, we think we'll start bumping that back up, and we'll kind of be able to recover through the rest of the year to hit our annual target. And it really is, a big part of it is the fact, really two things. One is that we have the reopenings, so we feel like that's going to help us recover. So, the project's going on a little longer than we had predicted and hoped. So that's going to help us. And then also we got that huge bump in our collection budget this year of $1.5 million. And we're investing that, not solely in digital, but heavily in digital, which is a huge driver of circulation and growth. So that's why it's true that 16% are under against our target for the year, taking even into account seasonality. But we feel like with those factors, we can kind of recover and hit our target for the year.
Yeah, okay, that's great. And then my second question is, the digital access that you showed was behind by 2%, I think. And you mentioned more people are using their own devices. I don't remember which slide it was. But are you accounting for any technology use, or is it specifically Wi-Fi use? Do you have wired computers in the branches as well?
Yes, all of the computers are connected to the network. Those are being, we have a software that calculates those numbers in addition to Wi-Fi.
So it's a total. Thank you.
I have a question. Do we monitor performance versus the previous period last year? And do you see, if not, do you see any value in starting to do that? I know that's a big driver for retail, for the retail model.
Yes, we do, for myself, I'm always curious on how we compare it to last year, last quarter, last month. It's not something that we've reported with usually, but yes, it's something that by looking at it, for example, for library visits, just looking at same period last year, we were ahead compared to this year, which is good. Same thing for circulation. Even though we are a little bit behind the target, it is still a greater actual number than what it was in previous years. So.
Well, that's because you have growth on the number, right? So it would have to be higher, but still could be behind target, yeah.
Any other grilling that you'd like to get? Anyone else?
You're just getting comfortable. Cozy with the numbers.
I appreciate the update. It helps. It'll give context, for the ongoing months as well as we look at these numbers. So, good. Thank you very much, Randall.
Thanks, Randall.
And congratulations on the last day of class. My wife also is a professor and has her last day of class today, so she's kind of excited. Item number 16, review and consider approval of the San Antonio Public Library Board of Policy on Privacy and Confidentiality of Information. This is an action item.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, trustees, library director, and everyone else. I'm here to walk you through this new policy for your consideration. So I want to just mention at the beginning that the library had an internal, staff-only, what we call library administrative directive in 1997 that directed staff how to deal with confidentiality and privacy. Obviously, a lot has changed since 1997 in every way you could think of. As we were thinking about this and updating it, it became clear to us that this needed to be a policy adopted by you, the Board of Trustees, rather than just a staff only, because privacy and confidentiality is so important to the operation of the library. We worked on this policy. Cheryl Sheehan took the lead from the staff side, and then of course your ad hoc board policy review committee has worked on this policy. They have seen it, they have approved it, and recommended bringing it to you, the full board. So that's a little bit of the background work that's been done. With some of these in the past, we've kind of walked through changes from the old policy. In this case, we really just rewrote the whole thing. So I'm going to just start at the beginning. I'm not going to compare with the 1997 policy. I guess I should also say we consulted the other city directives relating to privacy and confidentiality, and we worked closely with Steve Whitworth and the city attorney's office as we developed this policy as well, because a lot of it does touch on legal issues. So I'm going to go quickly, and then have time. That way we can spend our time on the areas you want to focus on. So you should have the policy printed. It starts privacy and confidentiality of information. And if you're at home, you should have received this in an email. And I don't know, is it going to be projected or people are just referring? Yeah, okay. So you're just going to be referring to your printed copy. Does everybody have that handy? Okay. So I'm going to start at the beginning, and that lays out the purpose of the policy. And then those 6 letters just tell basically what the headline, what the points are going to be in the policy. The second section is definitions. We've found it's a good practice, of course, to define, what we mean by these words as they're going to come up in the policy later. I'm not going to really spend time on that because they're pretty self-evident, but they are very necessary. On page 2 of the policy, in the middle of the page, there are the guidelines. This really is the heart, the meat of the policy. And I'm going to walk through a little bit the meaning of each one of these sections. Obviously, you can read it yourself, I'm also happy to come back and answer questions. So section A, the first of these 6, is the privacy policy statement. This really talks about how important privacy and confidentiality is to the San Antonio Public Library. It says that the library will be protecting borrower records to the fullest extent of our ability, while at the same time complying with any applicable laws. It also was clear that we don't sell data. I'm going to let the projection catch up with us. We're in the middle of page 2. It's a little bit further down. So that's the first section, privacy policy statement. Then the part that's there in italics basically says when people use the library, they agree that they're going to agree to this policy, which is a sort of normal thing. The second section, user account records, this is really what the old policy focused on. So this says library records that are deemed confidentiality are covered by a certain section of the Texas state law that exempts library records from some other government records that are always open and available to the public. It also talks about the Library Code of Ethics that talks about our ethical as well as legal requirement to keep these things private. It talks about in section F, it's going to say how we will comply with legal requests for library information. Then it walks through in this following paragraph, it kind of walks through what personal information is requested, that we limit that to what we really need to operate the library. It talks about retention. So we don't retain, if your card is expired and there's no activity on it, no fines, no books checked out, we don't retain that information. After you return your book or record or whatever, we don't retain that information either. This also talks about the fact that the records of minors are confidential as well. And it also outlines the fact that while they are confidential, parents and guardians do have a way to obtain that information. So basically they need the child's library card and the child, or the child's library card and the password. And what that does, there was a lot of conversation about this with the committee, that's why I'm spending a little more time on it. What that does is it protects the child, the custodial parent, and the staff. So that we're very clear about, we only give out information about a child's account in those particular circumstances. Otherwise, you can just imagine, especially a non-custodial parent wanting to look at the child's library record, maybe even to know where the other parent lives or information like that. We do not provide that information. The third section, computer use, third-party online providers, websites, and library emails, and email. Basically what this says is that when people are using a library computer to go to a website outside of the library, what they do is their business, and we can't control what that third party might do with their information, right? If they register they want to buy something, we don't know what that company is going to do with their information. If they sign up for a Facebook account, obviously Facebook is going to do what they want with their information. That's really the focus of this section. The fourth section is video surveillance and filming in the library. And this talks about the fact that we do use security cameras in the library, that we take reasonable efforts to safeguard the confidentiality of those security cameras, that photography is allowed in the library, that people can't be photographed without their permission. That is to say, patrons can't be photographed without their permission. And then that the library staff have the right to terminate sessions of photography if the person isn't following these rules. And then the last section, well, almost the last section, talks about when we have a request from law enforcement. So under the way the Texas law works, we can be asked by a court, through order of a court, to provide information. What books does someone have checked out, or did they have checked out? And in that case, we will, of course, comply with the order from the court. It also says, there's an important sentence there in that first paragraph, records may also be released to a law enforcement officer who is investigating a matter involving public safety in exigent circumstances. This is really covers two things. One is missing people. There cannot be an order from a court when there's a missing person because there's no knowledge of a crime yet. We work very closely with SAPD missing persons, so we comply with the law. Each time this comes up, we work with the city attorney's office. We release information very carefully, if there is any, to missing persons only. So if someone comes in the library saying, I'm looking for this missing child, we don't release information to that person, because again, that may be a non-custodial parent, who knows who that person is. But we do release some information to SAPD under the direction of the city attorney's office. And then obviously, if somebody's saying, the police are calling us and saying, help us prevent this bombing or something like that, we would work with them in that case. We do comply with requests for open records. So someone can make an open records request through the city, and we do comply under the law. So we would not comply, what books did you have checked out? That's not an open record, that's confidential. But, someone might ask about a contract or that kind of thing. Our most common open record request is for surveillance footage of, maybe a crime that might have happened in the parking lot. That's probably the most common open records request we get. We do also share open data. Data, of course, is not the same thing as a record. So this would be like how many people have a library card. That's data, not a record, which I could spend some more time talking about. The fourth section deals with, it lets the staff know and the public know that there are 2 city administrative directives that relate to data security and data governance, which go into they're much broader than this library confidentiality because they look at all city data and city records. So that was kind of the highlight overview of this policy. Again, the Ad Hoc Policy Review Committee spent a long time working carefully through every sentence of this. And I'm happy to spend as much time as you all want to spend with it. They did recommend bringing it to you all for your consideration. I will also mention that after you adopt any policy, so I'm not presupposing what you're going to do with this one, those policies are posted on the library's website in the section that has information about the Board of Trustees. So you can find there the board adopted policies. So now I'm ready to take questions or to review any section you'd like me to spend more time on.
Mr. Chair, I would like to ask a question, but I don't want to be seen as asking Kathy and Randall another question inappropriately.
Shame on asking questions, much less pointed questions or difficult questions.
And maybe this is something I could just ask, and then you could determine the answer and come back to us at another meeting. The privacy and confidentiality, you mentioned GIS tracking in the circulation conversation regarding the pie chart that had the 1%. You said you were going to, is there any concern with the way that data is going to be tracked and stored, and then the allocation of that data with respect to this policy?
No. So let me just make sure I understand. So basically the geographic information that we have in our database is the address of the borrower or the registered user, the city council district they live in, if they live in the city, the fact that they live in Bear County but not in the city, if that's the case, or the fact that they do not live in Bear County at all. So it's just that information. Their mailing address, well, if they have a post office, their mailing address or where they live, what city council district they live in, whether they live in Bear County or not, essentially. And so, of course, their actual mailing address is confidential. How many people are borrowers and live in, like, which council district, that would be considered open data by the city, not a record. Does that make sense?
Yes, and that also applies to the GIS data that you were going to be using, because that's probably like ordinance or ID.
GIS data, is that open data or is that open records? Just maybe to add to that question.
So the city has a data governance policy, and it's very specific to which data is only available in any form to the public or others outside of the business unit at the aggregate level, and which is personally identifying information. So it's very specific, and Dale is much more expert on this than I am, but there's also specific legal protections of library records. So there's even yet another layer of protection for that information for our customers.
Thank you.
I have two questions.
Sure.
The first one is, and just for clarification, we are no longer having fees. Is that correct?
We no longer have fines. We do still have fees. So that would be a fee. Primarily, it's somebody who has a book. We call it lost. That's probably not the best thing to call it. But somebody who's checked out a book or other item, it's been checked out for several weeks and they haven't returned it, then we do bill them for that amount. We would also bill someone if they damaged a book beyond repair. So the damage beyond repair, the person would have to pay. If they've had the book checked out for a long time and then they return it, then of course they don't owe anything even though they were billed. And the bill does explain that.
Just for clarity, I know there was an article in the paper where someone returned a book after 60 or 40 years worth of cassettes that was checked out, but no.
Sure, exactly.
Fee.
So there would, well, in that case, they probably weren't even, that probably wasn't even in our data anymore. But let's say someone checked it out last year. So there would be a fee on their account saying you owe X amount for this book you didn't return, but then literally as soon as it's checked in, that fee disappears.
So they're not liable for that fee.
Correct. But it does make their record, we wouldn't delete their record because we still obviously need to be able to contact them.
And then my second question is in regards to open records request. If you all are saving addresses, couldn't someone do an open records request regarding how many people have a library card checked out and their name and addresses?
How many people, I don't think I quite understand the question. So let me try this answer, and if I'm not understanding, just let me know, because I'm not quite sure I am. So if somebody submitted an open records request, let's say they put my address and asked if I had a library card, that's confidential. We would not respond to that. We would tell them why, right? We don't just not respond, we explain why. I live in Council District 7, so if somebody were to put an open records request, how many people have a library card in Council District 7, we would consult with the city attorney's office, we would determine if that's a question we can answer, which probably it is, then we could answer that question. But when it comes to something that would identify a person who has a library card, whether that person uses the library or not, whether they have a library card or not, the fact that someone uses the library, the exact books someone have checked out, the only circumstances under which that can be released is with an order from a court. I was just telling someone earlier, we had actually a situation, just to kind of make it clear how serious this is. About 4 years ago, the Bexar County Medical Examiner called me. They had located, sadly, a deceased person with a pair of pants and a library card. That was it. They wanted to know whose library card was it. Working with the city attorney's office, we determined in Texas you have a right to privacy even after you're deceased. We could not tell the medical examiner whose library card that was without an order from a court, which of course they obtained, right? But that means a judge, somebody has to agree, someone else has to agree. If the medical examiner, in this case, had submitted an open records request, which of course is ridiculous. I mean, obviously they would not have done that. But we would not have responded. We would have said, no, that's confidential under Texas law. Does that help?
Yes, and then just last, what is our safety net or backup if we do have a breach of data? We all know that has happened with many retail stores, with many other big corporations, where data and information is leaked and breached.
So that really is a different thing, because this is really telling our staff what to do. In the state of Texas, if there's a data breach of personal identifiable information, PII, is of enormous consequence, including enormous fines. The City of San Antonio's ITSD, Information Technology Services Department, does everything in their power, to the point sometimes it feels like too much, to prevent that from happening. So they're the ones who are safeguarding our data from that kind of thing that you're thinking about, which is of course extraordinarily important. For example, all of our staff, from the library director to our library aides, every city employee, not just library employees, have training every single month on how to prevent that from happening, because of course that can happen from a human as well. It's not always, hacking in or whatever. So I would say from my perspective, the city takes that extraordinarily seriously. I know occasionally I'll hear about some data leak in the federal government, and I'll think, they should have the City of San Antonio data security, because I don't think that would have happened. I will say that office takes their work extraordinarily seriously, and I feel that our data is very safe in their hands.
And that extends to our vendors as well?
Correct.
I would assume so, and just, I'm saying that for the benefit of others.
Yes, and I was just going to add to what Dale was saying. So specifically with respect to protections of library data, every system we have, so our integrated library system, our FARO system, which is about printing and copying at the locations and managing the computers, our incident report system, where we handle internal, reports of incidents. When we acquire those systems, update those systems, have, business associate contracts with vendors, subcontractors, all of it has IT security requirements attached to it. And I will tell you, like Dale's saying, it's exhausting because we go through a really rigorous process to vet all of those requirements before we even get the systems or have the contracts. So it's an extraordinary effort to protect the data.
Yes, I have two questions as well. Did I misunderstand, or did you say that with the appropriate legal direction, like a court order or a subpoena, whatever, we can release usage records, like tell law enforcement what materials have been checked out, or
yes, absolutely.
what websites have been visited?
Yes, to the extent we have that data. So website visited, that would have to happen in the same hour the person was visiting the website. So it's not very likely we'd be able to comply with that, but we legally could. That's where that exigent thing is. So if some kind of, I can't imagine what the situation would be, but if something was happening like right now, that's the thing we would be able to respond to. As far as, has somebody checked out a book in the past? Once the person has returned the book, we no longer have any way to respond to that.
That's what I thought.
So-
We don't retain those records,
We
right?
don't, but if the order from the court was, does this person have a book checked out presently? And if they do, you know, we would respond to that. I will say, I've been working with these records, you know, 11 years here, 10 years in, 6 years in Dallas, 7 years in Queens. The most common ones are, does the person have a library card? And do you know if they used a library or not? They don't come up very often. I haven't answered any in the last 3 years. So it's not a common thing that comes up from law enforcement at all. But if we have the information through the order of a court, then we do respond to it.
And my other question is, on your personal library account, you can keep a record of what you've checked out and that kind of thing. Is there some kind of firewall to keep that separate from casual inspection?
And that is mentioned in this policy. If a patron does opt to retain the list of what they have checked out in the past, which, for example, I have checked that box because I think it's helpful to be able to see. You know, I read these mystery novel series. Have I read that one? Then we still do have the data. And if we were asked by a court, you know, has Dale McNeil ever checked out? Sadly, I mostly read crime novels, so I don't know how that would look. But has he checked out this book, or what books did he check out in the past? We would have it, so we would be compelled to comply. I've literally never had that situation come up, but that's not to say.
Probably because they don't know we did it.
I think the law enforcement assumption is that we have much more data than we do. It's really the other way around. They assume that we know everything you checked out since you first had a library card when you were 5. And of course, that's just not true at all.
Thank you.
So this, again, I'm certainly happy to answer questions. I do want to just say this isn't an action item. We have had, you know, discussion before the motion, which I think is fine. But I think I'm supposed to mention that.
I move to accept the report.
I'll second.
Policy.
Great, moving along, we have a first and we have a second, we have a motion and we have a second. I just have a question, I apologize. On our purple copies here, some of the text seems lighter than the others. Did you make a comment on that I missed?
I didn't, because we have been fighting with copiers today in ways that you cannot even imagine. So in the final copy, there won't be the light and the dark. The one thing that is correct is on page 2, where that text is italicized. That will continue to be italicized. But the light and the dark, we don't know what caused that.
I guess my question is there a significance to that?
No.
Okay, so it's...
Because the original isn't like that.
Okay.
We really don't know what made it do that. That's a great question. I mean, I really appreciate you asking that question, because I'm just going to be quite honest. When I looked at this, I was like, what does this mean?
Okay.
I had to go back and look at the original. Oh, it doesn't mean anything.
Part of the burden of being raised by an engineer, I pay attention sometimes to that stuff and wonder if it's significant. Great, you answered my question, thank you. Are there any questions or comments? We have a motion, we have a second. But before we vote, I just want to make sure there's no other questions.
I was going to just make the comment that this policy reads much more clearly than the 1997 one. So just between the staff and the committee, I'm sure there was a lot of work there.
I really would like to commend Cheryl, who did a lot of the writing, and then also the 3 members of your trustees who really ask us a lot of questions. I think this process that you all adopted is very helpful, because we're able to spend literally hours, looking at words and the exact language and, querying, and then I think it makes, your time at this meeting, be able to be used so much more productively. So I think it was a great idea that you all implemented this process.
Will this replace the 97 LED?
Yes. It will completely
Okay.
replace it. The 97 one will be retired. And we have a process to do that.
I have a question, just are offering any comments from Andrea or Jean on the process. Y'all obviously feel comfortable with the process that was followed and the participation. Any comments from y'all before we vote?
Well, I just would say that I think the staff's doing the majority of the work, but it comes to us, and if we can read it clearly and then try to understand it and have questions, then we can clear that out for you all and try to let it move a little faster. But we don't want to skip over anything. We want everybody to be happy with the policy, but I give a lot of kudos to the staff for this.
Thank you, Jean. Andrea, did you have anything?
Same thing. They do all the heavy lifting. We're just, okay, wait, what does this mean? And they explain it, it's like, okay.
So,
And we try to be a little bit more cognizant about, especially things like this, when social media comes into play and just kind of what we're seeing trends now. That obviously weren't back in 1997, but staff picks up a lot of those things before it even comes to us.
and y'all feel comfortable with how any of your questions or whatnot were addressed and everything? I just want to make sure that's out there. Perfect, okay. Any other questions or comments before I call the question? Okay, so we have a motion, we have a second. There's no more discussion or questions. Nicholas, could you take us through a vote, please?
Jean Brady,
Aye.
Joanne Harris, Josie Martinez, Andreas Sanchez Muniz,
Aye.
Norma Montalvo, Fernanda Cardenas,
Aye.
Gisri Quar,
Aye.
Marcy Ince, Beth Graham,
Aye.
Judy Cruz, and Paul Stahl.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you, staff. Thank you, Gail. Gail would have stayed up there for another couple hours with all our questions, and he would have had perfect answers, and if not, Kathy would have popped up next to him and said, I'd just like to make a comment on it. Thank you all very much. This is important stuff. Thanks for indulging those questions, and thank you, board, for your good questions on this. Moving on to item number 17. Sometimes I'm circling these too early. Review and consider approval for the proposed design for Phase 2 of the Las Palmas Branch Library renovation project.
This will be a piece of cake.
After that last one. So we are really thrilled to be before you tonight to present to you the Las Palmas proposed design for Phase 2 of the bond project. And so we'll go to the next slide, and I'll just give a tiny bit of context before I introduce the architect of the project and one other person. So as you'll recall, Las Palmas Branch Library actually has two bond projects. The Phase 1 was funded through the 2017 bond. We went back through the process, got more money, more than doubled the project budget, and now we have a Phase 2 funded. The board previously approved Phase 1, so we're here to talk about Phase 2 tonight. So next slide. So the overview for Phase 2, which has gone through all of the public input process at this point, as well as approval and endorsement by the Facilities Committee, is $2.5 million. It includes design, and then the major element that you'll see the proposed design for tonight is the enclosure of the front plaza. So that enclosure of the front plaza, which will comprise about 2,000 square feet, so it's really big, was the reason we went back through the bond process to get more money, with the board's support. So it'll be the design, it'll be that enclosure, which will be a wonderful new event space. It'll be enhancements to the lobby so that that new space makes sense in relationship to the current meeting room, the branch. We'll have those great accessible new doors in the lobby. There'll be a parking lot resurfacing and restriping. This is a location for EV charging stations, so we'll be working with Office of Sustainability on that. It might come later after the project's done, but we'll be working with them. And then because we have a co-located city department in the Benavides Center side of the building, that's Metro Health, we wanted to really work with them and the architects to look at how we could make a little bit more sense for the customers for access to the Benavides side versus the kind of the library side. I hate to say versus, but to make it make more sense. Metro Health doesn't have any public-facing work that they do out of that space, so we wanted to give that some consideration so that people don't get too confused about the two pieces of the building. Landscape refresh and then additional technology improvements through the building. So next slide. So with that, I'll introduce Scott Carpenter. He is the architect for the project. He's with Seventh Generation is the name of the firm. His partner in crime is Pam Carpenter. She couldn't be with us tonight, but she's also working on the project with us. They have done a fantastic job. And before I hand it off to Scott to actually present the design, I did want to introduce a new city team member in the Public Works Department. Evelyn Gomez is with us tonight. She will be our new project manager from Public Works for our library bond and capital projects. So she is replacing Stacy Gonzalez, who I know many of you know. Evelyn brings with her a wealth of experience, decades of experience. Previously, she was a practicing architect, and then she worked for many years for the Alamo Colleges system, doing their projects, and most recently with SAISD on also building projects, obviously. And so we're really excited to have Evelyn as a part of our team. And Stacy's going to go on and do police projects now, as I understand. Anyway, so I'll hand it off to Scott.
Thanks, Kathy. I appreciate that. And welcome, Evelyn, to the team. Glad to have you here. Thank you, Chairman Stahl and trustees and director and all those present. I appreciate you all meeting with us this evening. I appreciate your service to our community on this board. I really do. I'm on the Historic and Design Review Commission, and I know how those long hours can kind of wear on you, so I really do appreciate you all being here. I'm excited to present this second phase because in many ways it's a realization of some of the aspirations that came out of the public discourse that was in phase one regarding the courtyard. Because of various reasons, those aspirations had to be deferred a little bit until additional funding came about. We were really super delighted that the 2020 bond really began to address those issues and kind of have this now be sort of a complete set piece as a result of this additional funding. So in the bottom of this plan view that you see here, that sort of olive green area is the subject enclosure that we're proposing for the courtyard. So right now, currently, if we go to the next slide, well, we'll talk about this in a bit. So there are some comments that we had about the proposal that I wanted to address through the course of our presentation, and some of them were about temperature control and lighting control. In fact, I appreciate we saw someone come into here and adjust the thermostat in this room as our fingers begin to get a little cold. So that personal comfort for a meeting space is really important. Sound, noise, and acoustics are really important, especially if you're having a public meeting. You have a lot of people in there, and there's a lot of noise being generated. And also security concerns, and particularly at this branch library, since it did experience a little bit of trauma a few years ago. You'll recall the windows were blasted out of the front of it. So those are all concerns that the design team was very mindful towards as we went forward in the design. Let's discuss temperature control for a second. First of all, the proposal is to try to make this as glassy a pavilion as possible so that that courtyard feels more like it's a courtyard pavilion or a garden pavilion rather than kind of a congested space that sort of forces you into the library. We really want it to be a very welcoming space. And so as a result of a lot of that glass and that transparency, people have expressed concerns about that. But there will be a new dedicated mechanical equipment system, so this isn't burdening the existing system that's currently being upgraded as part of the phase one. So it will have its own thermostatic controls, its own dedicated equipment. There are also, for the glazing, the glass that's being proposed for the enclosure, we're looking at low emissivity. You'll hear sometimes people say, call it low E. That's a coating that restricts the amount of heat that transfers into or through the glazing itself. So we'll be using that as well as double insulated glazing. So that means it's got two panes and a void in between, so that gives it a little bit better thermal properties than just a single pane of glass. One of the proposals that you'll see tonight incorporates a lower section of the storefront system with bonded metal panels that are also insulated. Those have pretty much similar thermal qualities to just a double glazed pane. There's also the incorporation into the design exterior horizontal shading devices that help to shade the glass itself, which makes a big difference throughout the day and throughout the seasons in protecting the glass from direct heat transfer from the sun, and we'll show you some diagrams on that. And there's also going to be interior retractable roller shades. We'll have to get into some more of the details as we develop this, but whether those are manually or electronically controlled, but those will help to control the glare and allow for community needs to be able to wear that projection. Another concern that we heard from the community and from other folks were just concerns about the sound, the noise and the acoustics, particularly because there's an existing meeting room in the branch that you all, I'm sure, are aware of, and this is just right across from it in that courtyard space. And there was concern about whether there would be a conflict with the sound there. And so we're definitely very cognizant of that. We're going to be using gasketed doors that will separate the space acoustically from the gallery area, as well as within the interior space itself. The finishes, the furniture, those selections will also help to benefit the acoustics within the space. And in general, it's been confirmed that there hasn't been there haven't been any comments about noise coming from Castroville Road. So that hasn't been a comment that's come up, but we posed the question to make sure that we're considering not only noise that's generated within the space, but also noise that's coming from outside of the building.
I'm sorry, so you
Yep.
did not, comments were not received about currently noise coming from Castroville?
Yeah, so
into the existing space.
yeah, let me explain that. So within the library itself, it has a large glazing storefront system that faces towards Castroville Road. And so we confirmed that they're not having issues there, so we shouldn't anticipate having issues coming from the street into this new proposed courtyard space. So we were kind of comparing the existing library space's acoustic experience to what we can anticipate there in the courtyard. Okay. And hitting upon that last concern about sort of security, there will definitely be, as part of this, additional security cameras and glass break detectors are going to be integrated into the existing systems. The existing columns there that will permit a discrete area for mounting cameras as well. That lower bonded panel in one of the options that you're looking at is what we call vandal resistant, but so is storefront. So your two options that you're looking at are one where the lower section's in just glass, and the other one is with the bonded panel. They should perform pretty well, but I think psychologically people will look at a metal panel and think, okay, I'm not going to go wailing on that quite as successfully than I will on glass. All the security improvements, though, are going to conform with COSA's physical security policies. We were asked to investigate issues of like bulletproof and bullet-resistant glazing. It's phenomenally complicated, as you can imagine, because it's not just the glass itself. It has to be the entire assembly that has to be then rated, and that becomes fabulously expensive. So what we did do, though, we began to investigate what some of the independent school districts are doing here in San Antonio and around the country. So we're trying to convince them and how they're addressing this. We're beginning to do some research on some impact-resistant film that it doesn't stop a bullet, but it keeps the glazing from completely collapsing, allowing permitting perpetrators to enter into the film and still got to fight their way through pretty hard material as a result of that. So it was taking the experience from other public sector facilities and cross-pollinating over to here at the library, at the Greenwich Library, to see where us to address that concern about bullet resistance and focus some very visible processes. So the exterior glazing, we talked about a really important thing that we are very cognizant of here, particularly in South Texas, is solar shading, protecting that glass so you don't get direct heat or sunlight penetration through that glazing. And this diagram right here is showing you the kind of that central orange thing is one of the existing columns, and connected to that, we're proposing then a horizontal solar shading device that helps throughout the year to keep direct light from going into the structure throughout the year and throughout the day. So on the far left there, you see, as it is in sort of our worst condition, when the atmosphere is most heated up in midsummer, the sun is being completely blocked. The middle diagram is showing where at the equinoxes, at the mid-year where you've got kind of equal day and night, this is showing the angle and where it's, once again, it's falling at the base of the system. And then during the wintertime, you actually want to encourage lighting and heat to come into the space. And so on the far right, you see the angle at high noon of the light penetration into the pavilion. So we'd be capturing that passive heating of the spaces, which is exactly what you want to be doing during the wintertime. Some of the proposed finishes that we're looking at to address the acoustic issues are these acoustical wood panel systems that are used frequently in auditoriums and performance halls. And so you'll see these are going to be used in the ceiling of the space to help absorb sound, as well as, like I mentioned, things like the furnishings and even the roller shades themselves have an acoustical property, a benefit to us, because they keep the sound waves from bouncing off the glass of the pavilion itself. Okay. So here, to give you sort of your first glimpse of what we're talking about, and you may have seen that photograph at the very beginning of this presentation of the existing conditions, but this is looking at the front of the Las Palmas Library, and with the kind of rotunda piece there of the columns that are existing, but we're then going in and infilling with the glazing system that I've been mentioning, but also introducing more planting into the space, those solar shading devices, and these elements that help to give it scale and to kind of soften it and make it more welcoming, because what we got from the public through even at the 2017 bond dialogue is that it was hot, it's inhospitable, this is South Texas, so we need really to have shade here. And there was concern about security of just children running out into the drive aisle there in the parking lot. So This kind of addresses all those designs. We think it picks up on the glazing, the existing glazing that you see in the left of this image that has columns that are out in front of it. So that's the existing condition. And with the proposed design, we're taking that same approach where the glass is behind the existing columns, set back, kind of deep shade, and to really kind of make it as minimalistic as possible. So once again, kind of making it as a structure that crowds out the existing space. This is the second proposal that you're going to look at. And I know it's subtle, but this is the proposed idea of having panels down at the bottom. And this is in kind of response to some of the comments that we received for the design. You know, is there too much glass? And so this is showing where you have the ability to put glazing panels that fit within the same frame as the storefront system. So you have kind of one point of contact, one warranty. You know, you don't fall into a bunch of waterproofing issues and things like that. But it also gives you an opportunity to add some color to it.
And Scott, I did just pass out the samples for this option 2. It's the paint colors that Scott mentioned, and then also the kind of the texture for the metal panels. So that'll come around to little paint chips and a sample.
So you may recall that a big part of phase 1 is to make the interior feel more reflective of the community. You know, bringing a lot more color, a lot more texture, a lot more vitality into the space. With phase 2, we're trying to bring that to the exterior as well. So where there's the large masked wall that's there right now. Right now it's just sort of a cream color. We're proposing it be kind of painted a Las Palmas green, you know, to really make this a monumental element, sort of akin to your enchilada red that you have here at the main library, to make this a landmark within the community. And then having the columns painted sort of a terracotta. You see some of the softening of landscape that's being introduced into this with some cabling trellis to encourage vines to grow up, which also help to assist in some of the solar shading concerns. Using those columns to hold the solar shading devices, as well as here we're introducing perhaps graphic banners that could be changed out seasonally or to support events like the book fair or it's National Library Week or something like that. But to also kind of just bring sort of a softening once again to this space. And we were even proposing kind of these festival street lighting to really kind of celebrate these sort of smaller courtyards that are formed on either side of the pavilion and just make it a lot more festival, a lot more fun, a lot more vital, and a lot more welcoming to the public than the current courtyard is. And here is the alternative proposal with the panels and those colors that we were proposing. And those colors were inspired by, one, the existing library's color scheme. All the metalwork is sort of this teal color. So we felt like, there's an identity there that's tied back to when this building was first designed. That teal color was very popular. But then the sort of the violet or purple color, that was really being derived from the library's own logo branding, as well as some of the other colors that we're looking at introducing. And the Las Palmas green, of course, is the palms, and the orange is also coming kind of from that idea of using sort of more vital colors here to activate it.
Could we just see 1 and 2 one more time?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so there is one. One is where the glazing goes, and it doesn't go all the way right to the ground. There is a small curve there that helps to lift it up and allows us to deal with some waterproofing issues right there at the base. And and a comment was made at one point in all our discussions about the nature of the irrigation that would be needed to get the vegetation established. So there would be bubblers, they wouldn't be spraying up on the glass and that kind of thing. And then the second one is where you've got the solid panels.
Are you seeing the difference?
Yeah, and so those are alternating in the teal and the purple to just bring a little bit more color to the exterior. Not really, yeah. So it's really more of an aesthetic decision, I think, and this is why, I was telling Kathy, we always make it a policy of never showing a project, a design solution that we can't live with, that we don't love ourselves. But these are like two of your children, how do you choose? Each have their own benefits. The one where the glass goes to the floor is more minimalistic. I think a little bit more elegant from that standpoint. It is sort of less cluttered as a result of that. It kind of hits upon that idea of making this as a light-up pavilion as possible. The one with the panels maybe gives you a little bit more modesty, particularly if you're at tables seating at the sides there. A little bit more modesty, like a modesty panel, yeah, a little bit more privacy, yeah. Kind of a modesty screen, yeah, us guys don't have to worry about it as much, I think the ladies know what I'm talking about. Yeah.
How does this help in the summers with the sun, the heat coming into the window?
Right. So with the solid panels at the base, if we have to go back to those diagrams again, the solar diagrams, just very quickly, we'll run back to that. There it is. Go back. There we go. It may be difficult to see in this image up there on the screen, but we were actually showing this as though it were the solid panel scheme. And particularly you can see with the mid-year, the spring equinox and the fall equinox, the light would hit kind of right there at the base of the panels. The panels are bonded metal on either side with an insulated core, so that helps to reduce the amount of heat that's being transferred through it. But they're really kind of neck and neck. If that's an insulated panel down there, or whether that's a double glazed panel, there's not a huge amount of thermal difference between the two of them.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but I think in the facilities committee we did talk about shades. Yes.
Yes. So on the inside there, and it may be difficult to see at this scale, but there are roller shades that go up into a compartment up above. And so those help to control and modulate the light as well as glare, so that if you do have a slideshow or some digital projection or something like that you're wanting to do, you can lower those down, reduce the amount of light, and those can either go to the top of the solid glazing panel, or they can go all the way to the floor if you don't have the glazing panel there.
So in this diagram, you're showing that glazing panel.
Yeah, so here we were showing it.
Solid insulated panel.
Exactly.
So I'd just like to make a comment.
Yes.
I would like to give a lot of kudos to the firm for all the studies they've done with the sun, the heat, and all the cooling and the shades and everything. However, I have worked in a library that had glass that went like that, floor to ceiling. It was a lot bigger space, I'll grant you that. But it was a problem from the start with going east to west and sun in the morning and then sun in the afternoon. And we did have shades and those kinds of things. And I understand there aren't books and shelves in this room. This is a different situation. But it's very difficult to work in that kind of situation for the staff with all the glare and all the things that go on.
Yeah, that's a really good point, particularly with your book stacks and things like that, that you're having to accommodate against an exterior wall like that. In this case, its primary function is a meeting, and so we looked at it both for set up for like banquet tables where you could have art events, and also for seating for lecture events as well. And there's not a lot happening right up against the glazing itself. Most of that is sort of floating in the middle of this space as a meeting room. We were showing kind of in that floor plan, that earlier floor plan, where there could be sort of informal seating grouping against that curved wall in the front. That's not like directly part of the meeting space, but it's not as big a concern to have a few, comfortable chairs sitting in front of a glazed wall as it is to try to deal with, stacks and equipment and other things like that. So that's definitely a valid concern. Here's a view of the interior. So in this view, we're looking towards the existing gallery. It's accessed through doors on either side, and we have sort of like a media wall, a presentation wall. And so the parking lot is over our back shoulder here, over our left shoulder. And you can see the glazing on either side. Those look out into the little entry courtyards that are created by the pavilion intersecting it. And above the blue steel metalwork that you're seeing there, the horizontal pieces are existing. They're there right now, and we're making use of those. And the structural engineer on our team is then augmenting those to create a truss that allows us to make a roof that has a slope to it that will shed the water. And so we're trying to kind of retain what was there, but also kind of a running theme here, sort of transform it and activate it in a way that really brings it into the 21st century and makes this a neat space. We're a little limited on how tall we can make that truss because there's an existing window in the gallery, as well as the height of that mast wall as well. We didn't want this roof to poke up above that. So it's shallow, but we wanted to make it as lofty as we possibly could. So right at the bottom of that, to give you a sense of scale, you can see the people there, but to the bottom of the existing beams, that's 10 foot 3 inches. And then up in the new steel elements that we're introducing there to create the trusses, that's where we're using that perforated wood panel to help to soften it, and that will be an acoustical panel. So that this isn't like a lay-in panel that you see, in a typical kind of grid system. This is a wood perforated system that's really quite elegant, and I think it will bring some warmth, both visual warmth as well as acoustical performance to that space. This is where it's set up as a kind of like town hall lecture type of situation. Behind that green wall there, towards the far end, there's a counter and sink where we can stage beverages, or if you have it set up for like an art event, craft event or something like that, that can also be used to clean brushes and that sort of thing. But that's tucked behind that wall to kind of make that whole function a little bit more discreet. And then from above that wall, we would have a retractable screen that could come down, much like what we see here in this space. So that could raise and lower in front of that green wall. And the two doors there on either side of the green wall then lead out to the existing gallery and to the restrooms that are part of the Phase 1 renovation. So those are all going to be totally transformed, as well as we're introducing then an accessible restroom to the space and doing some reconfiguration to create some dearly needed chair and table storage as well. There will be some some exposed ductwork within the space, and we're going to be utilizing that sort of spiral duct, so it'll have kind of a little bit of a techie industrial feel to it that we think is kind of complemented by the exposed steel structure. This is looking out towards the parking lot and out towards Castroville Road, and that curved front piece that really becomes sort of the face of the library. We think a very elegant piece. And there's where we were talking about, there's some informal seating along there, but there's really nothing like cabinets or equipment or book stacks or anything like that that are going up against that. Here you're seeing the same view, but with those panels down at the bottom. And the panels, we were kind of strategically putting those at about 36 inches, about 3 feet high, to give you kind of a sense of scale there.
Are there outlets along those panels?
Yes, so down at the base, what we'll do is we have a raised curb, and within that raised curb, we'll have inset outlets, for housekeeping, or if you're back in the curb apps area, if you want to plug in your laptop or whatever. So there will be some outlets for that purpose.
That's not affected by the presence of colossal panels?
No, yeah, that curb exists whether we have the glass go all the way to the top of the curb or if we do the panels. So that'll be consistent with both. And I think the directors had some conversations that he wanted to share as well about this.
Thank you, Scott. And too loud? About the, how's the temperature, by the way? It's better? Okay. Thank you, Scott. I too want to commend Scott and his wife, Pam. When the feedback that we obtained, and we shared it with the team, our architects, they really worked very hard to address those concerns. So what I'm here to tell you is our efforts to solicit feedback from the community and key stakeholders of the Las Palmas Branch Libraries. One of the things that we were trying to do is keep the project on schedule so that we could commence construction to have the renovation completed in time or just before summer reading program in 2024. So that's something staff emphasized to me when we were talking about the various steps that we generally take to solicit community input, stakeholder input. And so we were challenged in terms of the timeline. So what we shared with the community on March 2nd, I remember the date because it was the day before my birthday, we had a community meeting. At that time, we had a very preliminary rendering of what the enclosure of the plaza would look like. It was all glass. There was some feedback that was provided as a result of that meeting. We also met with the District 5 office. We requested a meeting with the city councilwoman as well as her chief of staff. The councilwoman was not available, but her chief of staff was. And when we presented the first rendering, which was all glass of the enclosure, she shared some concerns, primarily had to do with security, drive-by shooting. That information was shared with the architects. So then we presented that option to the facilities committee, and additional feedback was provided by the facilities committee, and Scott alluded to that or shared some of that. And so additional challenges for the architect to address. As Jean indicated, there's concerns about too much heat coming in with the sun, but as Scott has already shared with you, there's some solutions to that. Then the next step was Scott presenting options for my consideration for my review. And at that time, we learned some additional information was provided regarding aspects to security. Scott alluded to protective film or some application to the glass that would address some of the security issues that were presented to by the facilities committee and presented to the architects. That information kind of addressed the concern provided by the District 5 office, the chief of staff primarily, about drive-by shooting. Basically what we learned, there's no real glass that is bulletproof. All right. And again, Scott spoke to that. What's available is generally applied in police stations, and it's cost prohibitive if we were to consider that with for this particular project. That's the conclusion that was made as part of the conversation. So again, thinking about the, keeping in mind the timeline, my inclination was to go back to the community, and because we arrived, two options emerged, those that have been presented today. My inclination was to have another community meeting to say, look, we have another option based on the feedback, another option has emerged, we want to get your feedback. There was just not enough time to do that. But we did meet with Councilwoman and her chief of staff. We presented the two options. By the way, full disclosure, my preference is option one. So I shared that with the Councilwoman. We shared the two options, and she said, I prefer option one as well, but I can accept both. Again, there was no time to actually have a community meeting, so I did send an email to the key stakeholders, the president of the Friends of the Las Palmas Branch Library, and one of the leaders of the the West Side Neighborhood Associations Coalition, Ms. Velma Peña. Delia Trimple is the president of the Las Palmas. Both of them provided feedback. They like option one, but they can live with either of the two options. So I wanted to present that to you as it pertains to the processes that we generally use. We did not go back to the community because of the interest of keeping on track with the timeline to solicit feedback on the two options. So the best we could do was to solicit feedback from the two key stakeholders, Councilwoman Castillo, and actually three, the Friends of the Las Palmas and the West Side Neighborhood Associations Coalition, who we have a very good relationship. So I wanted to share that feedback with you and also provide full disclosure. What's my preference? I'm happy with either of the two options. They work. From my perspective, of just the aesthetics, I think the option one to me is more attractive. Yes, there's some concerns that were raised. I think the architects have done a great job addressing those concerns. I can envision at night with all glass, the library serving as a beacon for the community when it's lit. And not that you can't accomplish that with the panels, you can. I just feel that the all glass gives you a more amazing experience. That's what I envision. One of the things we try to do when we're working with architects and plans and so on, we try to envision in actual practice what that material or elements will look like. Because it's very hard when you're looking at renderings, you get an idea, but we try to take a step further and actually really work hard to envision in reality what it's going to look like. So I wanted to share that with you in terms of our due diligence. If the board, and this has no bearing on, should not have a bearing on your decision, but I wanted to let you know on next steps, should the board select option two, we will go back to the community, primarily because what we presented to them was the all glass. And so if we're going to go with the panels, which is fine, or I feel we need to go back to the community and say, look, this is what we showed you, this is what the board approved. It's slightly a little different, but not significantly or dramatically different. So I wanted to share that with you. Any questions?
So the community saw option one. When you reviewed that and showed that to the council district there, they had comments, and is that what brought about having a second option?
That and comments from the facilities committee. I was not part of it. Kathy reported back to me there's some concerns, and Jean just shared with you, too much glass, heat, lots of sun, and other concerns. But the architects have done a fantastic job of addressing those concerns in terms of too much sun and heat and shading and so on. Did I answer your question?
What is staff? Did they see the two renderings staff on us?
No, we haven't. I don't think so. Yep, they did.
Did they have a preference? I'm just curious, since they're the ones who are going to
Might be a little bit of a non-answer, I apologize in advance. So basically, the way this evolved, so we have the branch manager on the project team, right, Lily? And we have the public services administrator on the project team, along with me and Dale and others. And so as this evolved, basically the whole project team, of course, saw the first option, which was the only option, right, the all glass. Then it went through the input process. And so that's when we did revisions, and that's when the second option came about. So really, from the project team's perspective, we didn't think we'd end up in a boat where we're like voting on which option. So this is unusual, right, for us. So I think I can safely say, while I can't tell you, oh, Lily voted for this one and Jake voted for that one, I think the team feels comfortable with both options because we developed it, obviously with the architects as the input kind of came through. So, at this point, both options address all of the input that came about. And then I think Scott did a great job of just talking about those very, very few differences between the two.
Can I ask a follow-up question? And I'm sorry I didn't grab this information as you were presenting it. The panel is made out of, it's like a composite material, I think you said?
Yeah, so the panel itself is made out of cotton. It's several layers of materials. So the outer layer of aluminum, and there's an insulated core to that, and a curved layer of aluminum. This is not an exotic product. You see it all around here. It's a spandrel. Spandrel is the bands in the high rise, the clear glass, the solid glass, solid panels, the 4 levels of concealed mechanical equipment structure. So this is pretty reasonable.
And is it something that can be retrofitted if we went with option 1 and then later discovered there was like some pressing need to?
Could. The beauty, one of the reasons why we proposed this was that it could fit within the same frame as a conventional double-glazed storefront glazing system, as opposed to when we started investigating things like, true ballistic rated glass and things like that. You couldn't go to just like on here the conventional storefront system. And so the beauty of this panel is it is sort of an interchangeable unit. So you can go back and disassemble that storefront and put that panel in. So you could make it. There are maybe some easier retrofits that you could look at as well, as far as applied films and things like that, that those have their own sets of issues of vandalism, people scratching them, things like that. And I wanted to mention something about the vandal-resistant film as well that I didn't cover in my presentation. I wanted to make sure you all understood. In retrofitted situations like in the schools, they're going in, they're putting that on the inside face of the glass, okay? But in our case, since it's going to be a new construction, we can put it on the inside face of the first pane of glass. So it wouldn't be vulnerable to someone, carving, Joe Loves Sue or whatever into it. It would be protected within protective panes of glass as well. But going back to your root question, yes, you could conceivably, disassemble the stick frame storefront system and change out the clear glazing with the new panels because dimensionally they're the same thickness.
I just had a quick question. You said it was a double-paneled window. Have we taken into consideration the condensation and the fog that might be in the middle?
Yeah, so they are double pane, but unlike kind of like a residential system, they have a pretty robust gasket or seal to them. So they actually come as a sealed unit that then goes into the frames themselves, as opposed to 2 separate units that aren't quite sealed, and you have that possibility of condensation developing within the panel. So they're factory sealed. They're in some cases that is even evacuated, so that there's a void in there. There's no air in there. But so that seal, it won't have that kind of condensation issue.
I'd like to make a motion that we accept option 1.
I'll second that.
Thank you, Marcy. And then we can have a discussion.
Okay. So we have a motion, we have a second. Any other questions concerning the?
And I wanted to share one comment, Mr. Chair, if possible. As I'm learning more, like every year, I feel like I learn more and more about the city of San Antonio through the library system, which is like a really interesting process. I just want to recognize from an infrastructure perspective and from like the city's investment in buildings has not been equal in all parts of the city. So it's exciting to me to have an option, which I perceive as option one, as being like an architectural site, just like walking around Central Library and seeing like it's not just about the books, but it's like a beautiful building on the outside and on the inside with the artwork. That same feeling I want to happen in other parts of the city as well. And I think seeing the transformation in Memorial Branch Library recently, I think Las Palmas is like, the community obviously deserves that type of like building that you drive by, but also I think it's a statement that we make to kind of, catch up or bring equity to some of the buildings and some of the libraries within the system as well for those communities.
Our representative from District 5 is with us remotely. Norma, did you have any comments or questions? I want to make sure you were represented in this discussion.
No, I just wanted to give praise to architects, everyone involved for the design, well, the extension of the sun, that addition. I think it looks marvelous. I'm really excited.
Great. Okay, are there any other questions or comments before we call for the vote?
I just want to say, I think we should take into account the preferences of the councilwoman and of the president of the Friends, and they both seem to be leaning towards option one. And I think we should make as many people happy as possible, so.
Yeah, I'm not going to read it again, because I do have the text here, but from the public comments that we received from Delia Trimble, who's involved there at the library, her preference would be for option one. She would be fine with either, but she felt option one was her preference. So, and I'm glad she took the time out to give us that feedback.
I think with libraries, as we've seen the decline, the decline in people attending right now after the pandemic, I think something like this will draw them back in. It's just so inviting and beautiful. I mean, that's a really exciting design. So I appreciate all your effort and work, and I think the community's going to love it. And I really liked one also for the same reasons Ramiro was talking about. So congratulations.
I'm very excited to see the type of programming and activity that occurs in that room for the community. There's a lot of space for them to work with. Any other comments, questions before we vote? Okay. Nicholas, if you could take us through a vote, please.
Jean Brady,
Aye.
Joanne Harris, Josie Martinez, Andrea Sanchez Muniz,
Aye.
Norma Montalvo,
Aye.
Amanda Cardenas,
Aye.
Bree Quar, Marcy Ince, Beth Graham, Judy Cruz, Paul Stahl.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Work. It's going to be exciting. I'm glad we're going to stay on track. And I will say, Ramiro, wanted to make sure that every effort was made to ensure that as much public comment and consensus was able to be received. And so I know this is maybe not much of this is a little bit of a compromise by bringing up these two options, but I think this was a good process, and I think everyone got a chance to weigh in. So I appreciate your leadership on that. We'll move. We are moving to item number 18. Consider delegating the closure dates for 4 HVAC projects: Johnston, Guerra, IGO, and Pan American, to the library director and take appropriate action.
Yes, so, as you recall, with the Bertalo Branch Library HVAC project, which is actually under construction now, We had experienced a whole host of issues with getting the major HVAC components in, delivered, complete, correct. So we went back and forth a number of times of when we would be able to actually move forward with the project, close the building, do the work. So the board was gracious enough to delegate authority to Ramiro to pick closure dates. We think that is a really good practice still, because we're still experiencing challenges with getting major HVAC components in, complete, correct, so we can deploy the project. So what we're asking is basically a rerun of doing delegation to Ramiro to pick closure dates for the 3 HVAC projects you have on the screen. So Johnston Branch Library, Guerra, yes. I'm sorry, 4. Did I just say 3? Okay, it's time to go home. Okay, 4. Yes, it's 4. Let me get Gabby up here for the numbers. So 4 branch library projects for HVAC. So it's the 4 up there on the screen: Johnston, Guerra, IGO, and Pan American. And so not for any other projects that we have on the agenda, but just for these 4, similar to Bracalo. And again, these are just some of the reasons why we're asking for this discretion and delegation to the director. We will still apply all of the normal due diligence with communication to the community. So once Ramiro picks dates, once we have the equipment in, we'll be doing the full robust communication plan way in advance before the branch would actually close. And of course, we'll inform the facilities committee and the board of the dates.
Letting the community know which closest library to go visit
Yes,
while they're closed down.
absolutely.
Especially, I know, and I don't know, Ramiro, if you're going to pick, the summer or not, but I know sometimes the libraries are used as cooling sites. So if, for example, if Guerra's closed during the summer to cooling site, is there another cooling site close by that people can attend to?
Absolutely. And then our practice has been, in addition to letting people know where the next closest library is, for any project that has a long duration of closure, we consider interim service. So is there another nearby location that we can at least provide some library service? Yeah.
Any other questions? Comments? I'm assuming the director is fine with this? Do you have any comments?
No, other than it helps expedite the projects. We learned this past 2 years, the delays that we experienced with the various projects, McCreeley's, Memorial, Forest Hills, having this flexibility to not having to come back to the wait weeks to get approval. And given the library director discretion, I think it'll help expedite the projects.
I think this is a good opportunity to employ some lessons learned from challenges from previous projects. I think something that's going to make it easier on the community, more predictable.
I may add, when we were talking about this, one of the things that I emphasized to staff, we don't want this to become a precedent. This is an unusual situation right now because we're dealing with supply chain issues, but it's not something that we want to make it a practice after these projects are done.
I'd like to make a motion that we approve delegating the selection of closure dates to the library director for 4 HVAC improvement projects.
Second.
Motion and second. Any other questions or comments? Discussion. Okay, Nicholas?
Jean Brady,
Aye.
Joanne Harris, Josie Martinez, Andrea Sanchez Muniz,
Aye.
Norma Montalvo, Fernanda Cardenas. Juspreet Kaur. Marcy Ince. Beth Graham. Judy Cruz. Paul Stahl.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Item 19, we're going to remove that and have that at the next meeting. Is that correct?
Yes, library staff is requesting to postpone this particular item until next meeting.
That is the review and consider approval of the building dedication plaques at Petranco and Schaefer Branch Library. So we'll see that next month. Item number 20, receive an update regarding the interlocal agreement with Bear County for library services and consider taking appropriate action.
Yes, Mr. Chair, this will be done in executive session, so if you can lead the board into executive session, we can do that.
Executive session pursuant to Government Code Section 551.071, consultation with attorney, on this 26th day of April, 2023 at 7:25 p.m.